Understanding coupler basic physics and paying attention to details can make our model railroad worlds better places. They're the Rodney Dangerfield of the model railroad world. They just don't get any respect. Most equipment manufacturers' couplers are just an afterthought to most of the rest of us. They're just a clump on the end of the car that is often beaten up with a stick of lumber to make them work. I hope this program helps everyone see them for the brilliant and fine magnetic mechanism that they are intended to be. Again, sorry to everybody that's not an HO. And a big thank you to Katie. A lot of this information comes from Katie that I'm sharing here. Index standards, inspection, trip pin adjustments, remount, replace, and shimming for knuckle height. Katie started the process in 1942. For over 75 years have set the standard that all others are judged by. I consider no better place to start than Katie's documentation. Okay. The shank, the coupler head, the knuckle, the trip pin, and the knuckle spring. And here's the NMRA standards for height. 25/64 above the railhead for the center of the coupler, and the trip pin height should be a 32nd above it. Here's an HO scale height gauge. And this is called the front plate. This is a 64th. This is a 32nd, and it's designed to, the trip pin should be high enough to just slide over and touch the front plate. Katie recommends standard coupler heads over scale coupler heads. This will help with rough crack issues. This is how the magnomatic system of coupling and delayed action allows spotting of cars. When you've got couplers that work properly, this is what you can expect from them. You stop over the magnetic uncoupler and allow a little slack to come between the couplers. Withdraw, and the trip pins and the magnet pulls the couplers apart. When you bring the cars back together, you put them in a delayed action, and you can push a car into a siding where it belongs, and then just pull away uncoupled. While not an official standard, I created a small template to judge the trip pin angle using a diagram glued to a thin sheet of styrene. What I did was, this is 3/32 off the center line of the track, and that's about where the trip pin should be. If it's too close to the center line, you end up with problems. If it's too far out, the magnetic uncoupler doesn't do much good. These are two different kinds of coupler gauges. This is called a Bob Mack coupler height gauge. And here's my trip pin template, and this is a standard Katie track gauge or coupler gauge. Here's how a Bob Mack, it's a go no go type gauge. It's pass fail. The knuckle should go in this opening, and the trip pin should be above this flange down here. It's available through Great Decals. And here's a standard Katie coupler height gauge. This is a coupler and knuckle and trip pin at the right height. Here's a knuckle that's too high, riding too high. Either either it's riding too high back here, which is likely the case, that the frame of the car is riding too high. If there's a washer there, it can be taken out. That happens to be a scale knuckle here in this coupler height gauge. This is the same thing on a Bob Mack gauge. There's coupler that's measured, it's too low, but you'll see by the angle of the coupler that it's not being held up where it belongs on the end of the, in this case, it's a caboose. The same thing where it's running too low. And it seems to be at a slight angle. In this case, everything's at the correct height. Same thing here with a Bob Mack gauge. Coupler knuckle is at the right height, but the trip pin is too high. So it's not down close enough to where the magnet would be to allow for proper uncoupling. The same thing on a Bob Mack gauge. Here the knuckle is again is acceptable height, but the trip pin is too low. It hits the gauge here. Same thing on a Bob Mack gauge. In the relaxed position, the knuckle center should be over the track center line. See, the couplers are centered on the, well, this might be the angle I'm taking the picture at, but you can see that the glad hands are about the right distance off center. In this case, you've got a situation where the couplers are not on center. In this case, the glad hand or the trip pin, the coupler's on center, but the trip pin is not off to the side enough. And you notice this gigantic spring over here. This is a non-Kadee coupler. And this is also a non-Kadee coupler. This is a plastic coupler. And notice that it's not, the spring is not pushing the plastic knuckle over where it belongs. So in this case, you basically won't couple or couple very well. In the case of this car, the coupler is actually pulled to the wrong side of the coupling magnet. Note that the bronze centering spring has been, it's supposed to be been, installed upside down. See right here, the bronze centering spring on a Kadee number 5 is installed upside down. This is a factory installed coupler, by the way. So it actually ends up having the coupler go to the wrong side. Proper operation of the coupler and trip pin includes enough spring tension to properly center the coupler and close the knuckle. Note that the coupler looks slightly off center in the coupler pocket. See, it's off to the left here a little. Proper operation also includes enough freedom of movement to allow the magnet to open knuckle and pull the coupler head to one side for proper delayed action. Notice not only is the knuckle open, but the coupler itself is being pulled to one side for the delayed action. This shows the two different parts of a Kadee number 5 bronze spring. Notice that the long finger on the right is aligned with the flat on the coupler. That's basically what makes the coupler centered in the pocket. Over on this side, this finger has a different bend to it for it to push against the backside of the coupler shank over against this one. That's what allows the coupler to be centered in the pocket. If these fingers are not adjusted right on the bronze coupler pocket, then this will not happen. Oh, the flat part of the bronze spring is always toward the top of the car, and the flanges on the spring, okay, are the same direction as the trip pin, facing down toward the track. Let's see. It must be a little later in the program. I've got something where I show how to adjust the bronze spring. Trip pin adjustments. Here the couplers are right head, but the trip pin is too low. There's two different tools I use for doing this. This is the standard Katie tool for bending a trip pin, and then this is a flat jawed pliers that I use. If the trip pin needs to be bent up, if it's too low, then the Katie pliers is used to bend the trip pin a little, put a little more radius into it. And notice this is done without putting any stress on the coupler or the frame. In this case, the glad end or the trip pin is way too high, and I use a flat jawed pliers to straighten it out a little bit and take a little curve out of it. Remount and replace. This is one of my UP Centralia car shops cabooses, and the coupler is not being held properly in the pocket, so the coupler is hanging down. This picture shows the large gap right here in the coupler pocket. And to remount the coupler pocket, use a number 080 tap drill with some 080 round head brass screws. And I've got my nice cradle made from a knife block to hold the car when I work on it. Take out the first step is to drill 3/64 hole using the Katie pocket side holes as drill guides. Then you run the tap into the car frame itself. Careful not to come up through the platform. I think I used a bottoming tap for this. And then to get the old coupler pocket off, use an X-Acto blade. And then I have to clean up the coupler face. Next, make the spring prepare the bronze centering spring. They need a slight adjustment. As they come, they usually don't have quite enough spring tension to hold the coupler shank where it belongs. What I do is I take a little screwdriver blade and slightly lift up and push the end of the spring over the top of this flange at the end, so it's sitting inboard where it is. And then do the same thing with this spring here. I lift it up and move it over and let it go sit down in here. Then what I do, I come back here with the tip of the screwdriver and very gently push in right here to bend this spring in a little bit so it naturally wants to sit right in this position. If when you do this it sticks way over here too far, that's too much. You want to bend it in just so it will sit right here. And the same thing on this side. Push it in so it'll sit right here. Notice there's a little curvature in here right now. After you bend this, that curvature won't be there. Now these two springs will have a little bit increased tension on them and will hold the coupler shank right where it belongs. The coupler shank itself, you'll notice that there's a little extrusion point on the coupler surface. The couplers have a nice slick coating on them, so you don't want to file it down too much. But if there's any kind of burr here from the extrusion, you need to just kind of gently, with a very fine file, smooth it off. Then I dip the whole coupler into the graphite to lubricate it, and then just tap off all the excess. That gets everything on the coupler lubricated, including the knuckle and all the surfaces, including the face of the knuckle, which needs to slide when the couplers come together for coupling. Here it is after the bulk has been tapped off, but you can see there's residual graphite everywhere on the coupler. Here's the 080 brass screws going through the assembled coupler pocket. And here's the new coupler pocket and the adjusted coupler. Notice it's over a magnet here, so it's being pulled off to the left. Okay, so that's the remount of a coupler on this particular car. It's very similar for other cars, but there's going to be challenges no matter which car it is. Remount or replace number 2 Rapido. Makes beautifully detailed cars. They're early cars. They've gone a long way. They may actually be using KD couplers now, but the very first cars I got from Rapido had some really inferior couplers. Notice a giant knuckle spring here. The coupler itself acted like it was dipped in paint. The knuckle wouldn't even open. But like I said, this was a first generation car from them. This is one of their first generation reefer cars. I haven't had hardly any problems with them since then. And here's the plastic. That's probably an Accumate or something like that. I'm not sure what it is. Note the giant spring over here. And notice that the brass spring is upside down in the pocket. This thing should be turned the other way around. As with the previous remount steps, I reassembled the coupler pocket using a new KD centering spring and number 5 couplet ready for installation. In this case, it doesn't have the side loops on the side of the box. I think I may have taken them off, or it may not be a number 5 coupler pocket. Now it's been remounted and it works properly. Remount and replace number 3, an AccuRail. AccuRail and many others use a push-on pocket cover cast into the floor. The pocket cover pin holds well at first, but if you remove, the cover can loosen up easily. You notice that the bottom of the coupler pocket here is sagging and coming off. That's why the coupler is low. Floor from the previous side showing the coupler pin protruding up through the floor. Fortunately, Acurail pins fit fairly snug and not likely to loosen. Do not glue this pin if you ever want to work on the coupler again. Acurail plastic Accumate. These are two-piece couplers that are basically throwaway couplers. They do this so they can supply a coupler, but they're not going to supply like Katie couplers for the car. That's up to you. And here's the coupler pocket cover. And here's the boss and the coupler pocket. And this will work. This works well for a Katie coupler, especially their whisker couplers. Okay. Atlas Accumate, this Atlas factory assembled hard ballast car used Accumate couplers, make him good candidate for replacement. Notice the plastic couplers, and in this case, they've got a little finger of plastic off instead of a spring, and very quickly this plastic begins to just stick out here, and it doesn't even hold the knuckle closed. So this poorly mounted coupler has no chance of coupling to a Katie scale coupler here. Replace with a Katie number 5 or a 148 whisker coupler. Remount and or replace number 5. This is Intermountain tank car, has a pinned pocket cover that refused to stay in place. I opted to remount the cover with a 256 by 3/16 brass screw. There I got the drill and the tap mounted to the same pin vise, so it makes it easy to just drill and then tap the hole for the coupler pocket. Then I drilled and tapped and then reassembled the coupler pocket with a Katie number 5 and a brass screw. And notice it's in this case, if did I get that wrong? All right. In this case, I drilled and tapped the hole for it and held on the coupler pocket with a brass screw. If you want to try and use the pin that's in the coupler pocket cover down here, then this little dark spot is just a little bit of ACC to make sure that the coupler pocket cover doesn't slip down. You can take this off again if you need to with a chisel blade on an X-Acto chisel blade. Number 6, a Proto 2000. This dusty swap acquired tank car has supplied P2K plastic couplers. Notice the plastic finger sticking out here, which is what's supposed to be holding the knuckle closed. That's a throwaway coupler. There, a more detailed view showing that there's no way that the couplers, this is constantly going to be an uncoupling problem when you're running around the layout. Fortunate to be screw mounted, easily replaced with a Katie number 5 or 148 whisker coupler. Remount. Here's a red caboose car. Well-detailed kit without couplers skipping the rough pockets and pinned over. Easier to mount a Katie number 5 coupler and box. or what they call the gearbox. Car floor hole number 51 and 250 sip tap will make mounting them a snap. In other words, that's the surface for the coupler pocket. And here's two different KD couplers that can be mounted there. And this is the coupler pocket that comes with the red caboose kit. Shimming up coupler knuckle height. Shimming at the truck bolster with 15 thousandths or 31,000 hard fiber washers will raise the car and the coupler. It's rare for knuckle to be too high, but if it is so, skimming the coupler pocket down will help. Katie's number 211 gearbox shim. These are flat shims that you can put between the coupler pocket and the frame of the car. If the knuckle height error is substantial, Katie's offset coupler shanks could be the answer. A 50 thousandths overset or underset from normal is offered. You'll notice that the big combination here is you have long, medium, and short shank couplers. And for all three of those, they have an underset, which has the coupler knuckle high on the shank. This one here is with the coupler centered on the shank. Here the knuckle is below the coupler shank. And then that's the same thing here for the different shank links. And here's the coupler numbers that you would use to get to that situation for you. Any questions there? Did I lose anybody? You're all still there, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. This is some other tools I use. Supply KD couplers, various tweezers, files, rifflers, and X-Acto blades. This is a riffler here. It's like a curved file blade that allows you to get into tight places. Paper and pen for notes and patience.